Hello everybody, and welcome to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. It's the Comedy in the Kingdom tour, live on Bog Radio in association with 24 Flicks. And we're going to talk about the Comedy in the Kingdom tour coming your way next summer of 2024. That guy right there you're looking at is going to be one of the comics on the tour, and he's from Canada, from small intimate clubs all the way to arena shows. Our guest today has pretty much experienced everything in the world of comedy. However, the most important thing is he's learned to be himself over a 20 plus year career, having toured all across North America for nearly 2 decades. His credits are many and diverse, including appearances on Just for Laughs on the Comedy Network, CBC Television's Halifax Comedy Festival, Thou Shalt Not Laugh, or I should say, Thou Shalt Laugh, Please Laugh, on Netflix, as well as hosting numerous specials and series. In addition, Leland has the lead role in a dramatic film, Extraordinary, and the comedic film, Sleeper Agent. And most recently, he just received a Lifetime Achievement Award at the LOL GCA Comedy Conference held in Triangle, Virginia. Please welcome to the show a member of the Comedy in the Kingdom tour, Mr. Leland Klassen. What's up, Leland? How are you?
Hey, man, that was a long. I thought we were going to run out of time on that intro.
Don't get close. We got like 55 minutes here, man. I was running close there. You've done so many things, Leland. I'll tell you, man, I appreciate you being on the show. And again, as I just mentioned, recently you were given the Lifetime Achievement Award at the LOL GCA Conference in Virginia, run by Roxanne David. Tell us a little bit about that.
She's awesome. Man, just completely humbled to be given an award like that, and that was my first time going to the conference. So that was wow, what an experience. Definitely putting that on my calendar for next year. They do it every year in the area there, and comics from I think there was in the end there was like 20 different states, and then Canada. I was representing Canada. Diverse, whole big group of people from all over the place. It was fantastic getting to meet some folks I had never met before, and great panel discussions, great it was really good, just from beginning to end.
It's a great conference. I've been to several of them. I could not attend this year and last. Just too many things going on, but I've been there for sure. It's an awesome atmosphere. The seminars, you got to love it, because it talks about helping you improve your visibility as a performer, how to market yourself, how to advertise yourself. It talks about, the mechanics of comedy and giving you different ideas of how to improve your sets. And not to mention, you get a chance to meet all the other comedians there. Some of the members of the tour were there. Joey Aiello was there.
And he tore it up, by the way. He had a showcase and just crushed the house. It was amazing.
Well, that's Joey. I mean, he always does that. And of course, Felicia Frazier was there.
She's great too.
Chocolate. Maurice was there.
Yeah.
So and all members of the tour. So yeah, it's always a lot of fun being down there. I'm glad you were able, and kudos to you for coming all the way down from Canada to attend that event, man. I'll tell you right now, I love it.
Yeah, those flights are a little pricier than I thought they were going to be.
Well,
where am I going? Oh man, okay.
Yeah,
but it was worth it. It was worth it, the trip, and yeah, I got to see Shanita and all those folks, and it's great to see her again. It was great to see some people I hadn't seen in a while, but it was also great to meet some new folks, and just a great fellowship of people there. It was great. It was awesome.
Yeah, great fellowship, and a lot of very very funny people there in one room. Willie Brown, I forgot to mention Willie, who's also a part of the tour, the ventriloquist. He was there with Uncle Whitty, I believe. And a couple of his friends from the Suitcase. Always love hanging out with them.
But he had somebody out one day. I forget who it was, but they were taking pictures with him. It's like, I was like, that seems weird, but I guess, that's the thing. He's great though, man. What a great guy though, man.
Yeah, Willie is a great guy, and I love the puppets. Ventriloquism is a different style of comedy, but comedy nonetheless. It's like you really have to be a good writer, and the way he's able to set that up with the characters.
It's all about the setup, isn't it? For ventriloquism, it's just all about that setup. And guys that are really good at it, like Willie, they have it down.
And he's got a lot of humility too, because he uses the setup for the joke to be on him. You know,
Right.
I mean, he really pops on himself really, really well. You know, and it's just a great set anytime he's up there. But I want to thank you for being on the show, and we're talking about Comedy in the Kingdom tour, which is a clean comedy tour. A lot of Christian / clean comedians involved with this. I want the world, Leland, to know that there are some very, very funny, clean comics out there, and comics that represent the Lord. And I don't think a lot of people are aware enough. If I think about, and I'm not busting on secular comedians that use profanity. We don't. We rep the Lord, and we do it a certain way. And it's hilarious. I don't know about you. I know it. I know this has probably happened to you, where you've maybe gone to a show and you're in a lineup with comedians that are not clean. And then you go up there and people, they don't even realize you're not cursing.
Yeah.
You know, you're killing it.
If you're bringing it, then they don't even realize till maybe after or near the end. They'll be like, wait a minute, he hasn't been cussing, has he? But
and they don't realize it until later. And then they thank you. They go, I really appreciate that. The most lucrative comedian in the world is Jerry Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld is worth almost $1 billion. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The closest comic to Jerry Seinfeld is Kevin Hart. All right. And Kevin Hart is off about $5 or $6 million. I'll take his millions. I'm just saying, Leland, that, you know, clean works.
Yeah.
And Jerry Seinfeld leads the charge. And how much more, Leland, can we do in Christ?
Another billion. Oh wait, are we talking fiscally? Wait a minute.
$1 billion, is that all? The Lord's laughing at you right now, Leland. Are you kidding me? Anyway, so I think it's a great idea. I know that it's something the Lord has dropped into my heart, and I'm just going to let the Lord lead the charge. I'm following God's lead on it, and if there's anyone out there that loves this idea, you are a Christian entrepreneur and you want to support the tour, you want to sponsor the tour, you want more information about the tour, you can contact me at Maurice Brown Comedy Hour at gmail.com or Maurice Brown LLC at gmail.com. Or heck, just give me a call. You know, just pick the phone up. Call me 703-357-6675. And let's talk it up if you're interested. Leland, once again, I want to thank you for being on the show. Now, you did a dry bar comedy, which is absolutely awesome. We're going to play a snippet of that. When did you do this special?
Well, it was in the first season that they started doing it. I can't remember what year that was. It was a few years ago now, 2000 and something, in the teens, right? I don't remember.
It was 2010 or something. But the only reason I asked that, Leland, is we had some comedians that actually did a dry bar during COVID.
Oh, no, mine was before that. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were talking about how it was kind of a drawback. It's great you got the special in, but it wasn't the same.
That's what I heard. I was actually talking to at the LOL GCA conference. I was talking to some comics about that, and maybe it was Joey I was talking to, but I can't remember. We were talking about a comic that he knew that had gotten a special, and yeah, they went there, and it was spaced out and masked, and hardly anybody there, and you know you kind of have to fake that you're crushing it. Well, they'll fix it in post.
Yes. Well, you sort of kind of have to fake you're crushing it. You, however, on the other hand, did not have to do that. You had
I had a great crowd
in Provo, Utah, and we are going to play a little snippet of that routine. Leland Klassen doing his thing, talking about marriage during his dry bar comedy.
I'm married. Been married for 22 years. And, yeah, she's all right. I don't mind her. No major beefs. You see people, looks on people's faces. Why would he say that? That is hurtful. No, I've done some good things in those 22 years. Our love has changed, though. It has. You can't keep the puppy love forever, right? It used to be. I remember talking to my wife on the phone in the old days. It was the sappiest puppy lovey doggy thing. It was sickening. It was so sappy. It was like right before shows. It was like, I love you more. After you love me more, because I just said that I love you more. I don't think that's possible, because if you were listening, you would know that I just said that I love you more. Make myself sick sometimes. But it's changed now. It's grown. It's matured, right? I was talking to my wife on the phone before the show tonight, and you just tell it's different now. It's like, okay, hon, I should probably get going. Yeah, I love you. Oh, I love you more. Remember those days when you see that all the time? Hello? That's some pretty smart things for a small brain guy, though. I'll give you some advice, fellas. Take this one. I used to write little love notes to my wife all the time. Not love notes and then hand them to her. Here's the love note. I'd make tons of them, hide them all over the house, right? So she'd be opening a drawer or something. Oh, you love it. Super romantic. It was awesome. Smartest thing I ever did, right? Because I haven't done it in like 18 years, and she's still finding them. It's like, all right. Oh, look who's romantic. Hey. Is it me? For sure? Okay. Thought they were gone. Take that. Yeah, I do have some habits kind of drive me crazy though a little bit. I talk in my sleep a little bit of a sleep talker. I also sleep with my eyes open every once in a while. And it can be a little bit, well, here's where it gets really creepy. Sometimes I combine the two. I should roll over in bed and have a me stare at you. It's like, Mr. Jenkins wants more soup. I like cheese. Not a great joke in this corner. I realize that now. Probably not the best.
Leland, awesome stuff. What folks couldn't see there, you were kind of bending over doing the me joke, and what a great visual for them. But
I'm not the greatest radio comic, am I? So visual all the time.
You are super visual, and what I like about that, I'd love to hear your response to this, because I wasn't planning on asking this question, but it does beg the question when you're talking about a physical comic. And we've had a lot of them come down the road, but what happens is, as you get older, that physicality, as you've gotten older through the years, and it looks like you're a former athlete, but have you noticed that it becomes tougher to do some of the visuals?
I was just talking to somebody about this on the weekend too. It's so funny they asked that. I've stayed in. The person that I was talking to came out by saying, "Well, man, I guess that's you stayed in shape, so you can keep doing the physical stuff."
Yeah.
And I said to him, "Well, I'm in okay shape. Anybody who's old can look in good shape, but it just hurts more. Everything hurts more, and it lasts longer to heal." But I will say this: there were bits that I used to do that I don't do anymore. And I remember this veteran comic saw me one time early on, and I used to do this bit, and it was, here's my impression of a skydiver whose chute won't open. Skydiver, chute won't open. And then I just step back from the mic, and I just drop, like horizontally, I drop straight down. Boom. I go horizontal, and then I drop straight down so that it's a big crash.
Yeah.
And that's just the bit. His chute didn't open, so he obviously hits the ground really hard.
Yeah.
And he looked at it and he's like, "Oh, he's not going to do that much longer." And I stopped. It used to hurt. That bit used to hurt a lot. I don't think it was ever worth the laugh I got. That's for sure. Yeah. But every once in a while, I remember it and I'll bring it back. I'm like, I'll do this again. If I look at the stage and it's a little bit, maybe there's some carpet and a little bit of underlay. Okay, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
You get on some of that cement or something. I was like, nah, I'm not going to do this bit again. But yeah, it's changed. I have changed. I'm still pretty physical, but as I'm becoming an old man, I'm doing like old man physical stuff now. So it's still funny to look at, but it's just probably because it's more awkward because I'm older. I don't know.
I'm not able to recall any physical comedians right off the top of my head. I know there's some really good ones. I'm not thinking of any right now, but comedy requires a certain level of physicality and animation anyway.
Sure. Yeah, well, and listen, I'm as much as it pains me to say this, I'm a performance comedian. Like I like to think I have good writing and those kinds of things, but I'm a performer. I'm actually I'm acting. I'm putting on a show as opposed to just standing there, with a mic in the mic stand and just delivering comedy gold. I gotta massage that gold a little bit and dance around for you.
You were talking about Joey Aiello. He's really physical.
Oh yeah.
He's really physical, and he actually did a dry bar during COVID, and he was really ill, and he just wanted to get the dry bar done. He'd been waiting for such a long time, and he was ill, and he's still. I mean, he was just all out 100%. Also, I think when you do that kind of comedy, for some reason, and maybe you've experienced this as well. Yeah, I don't feel as spry as I used to. I'm kind of sore here and this, that, and the other. But when it's go time, you forget it. You don't even think about it. You just dive in. Have you ever had that? I mean,
I mean, with an audience, just like anything, when you're doing stand up, you feed off that audience. Yeah. So if this audience is just bringing it, I'm bringing it, they're bringing it, then it's like you go the extra mile. You're like, well, let me take this a little further then and add a little more physicality to this or whatever. You feed off the crowd.
Now we mentioned, or I mentioned during the open, that you've been doing this for over 20 years.
Yeah, 28 or something is what I was.
Almost 30 years now, and I know that you've been clean for the most part of that time. But how did you get started in stand-up? What motivated you to get involved? And was there ever a time where you did dabble with secular and then just, what, I'm just going to do this clean. I'm going to do this for the Lord. What's your story, Leland?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't differentiate between secular and clean because I've always just worked clean. I started in comedy clubs and really rough one-nighter bar gigs.
Yeah.
But I started right from there, right from the beginning, and was just like, I'm going to honor God with this. So, and that's how it looks for me to do that by doing a clean set. So yeah, I've never, that's never been. I know it's difficult for some folks, and I know it's different and all those kinds of things. But it's just never been an issue with me. It's just like, this is how I'm going to do it. And once I decided that, the decision was made. It didn't, nothing, there was never any temptations. There's never any, I just did it that way. And now I will say this, when I get to these really tough bar gigs in like Saskatchewan, Canada, and they're drunk and, a lot of guys that I was coming up with, if you don't get those kind of crowds attention right away, you lost. Like they're just going to start, and then the gig is gone. And my hand jokes, I would get their attention with that, and then they're like, "Oh, what's this?" Okay, and then I could do the show. And my pacing was, I was actually watching this pacing of this. I'm kind of getting off on a couple tangents here, but the pacing I was watching on this dry bar, it's a lot slower than I was watching it. Going, man, that seems slow, but I guess I had kind of just slowed down and enjoyed the hour. Whereas, different size, I've been doing a lot shorter shows, like 40 minutes lately and stuff. So I'm kind of picking up the pace a little bit. Yeah. Jamming another joke in there and just trying to hit them harder, right? But anyway, having said that, I was blessed with that. God said, okay, here's some hands. And if you're gonna honor me with that, here's some big old hands. So at least make that a little bit easier for you. Get that visual going, and then when you got their attention and they trust you to laugh, then it's, and it wasn't always easy, but I'm just saying that must have helped.
Well, I like what you said about the pacing, because when you look at someone like, heck, man, I look at Dave Chappelle, for example, and he's gotten to a point now. Dave Chappelle like marinates on ideas during his sets. And whereas you're just talking about pacing, one thing I've found about stand-up over the years is that, and I love to hear your response to this, is that when you're going fast, you're doing rapid fire, and you want to keep the audience's attention because, like you said, you pay a price if you lose them.
Yeah.
So you don't want to do that. But then how do you get to that sweet spot where it's like, I can do anything I want. I've got their attention.
Yeah, well, and I think, it's the time you're like, there's a big difference between, and I haven't done this in a long time, and I was actually thinking about that this weekend as well, just on other pacing issues, but I haven't had to do a 7-minute, comedy showcase so I can get to a festival or whatever in forever. But that had to be tight. You had to be bang, 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 bang. Laughs per minute had to be. Now here's the thing: if I start telling a story, I can get the laughs per minute up there. But sometimes it takes me a little while to get into that story, and an audience has to be like, okay, we're willing to sit in this because we want to see where this is going. But it is a very different pacing, and I think that the type of show you're doing, when you're doing your own shows, when you're headlining big shows, you kind of have more freedom. When you're Dave Chappelle, you can do whatever you want. They're going to listen.
Yeah.
So, I think some of that's earned reputation and those kinds of things, right? And the type of show.
Yeah, I think it's definitely earned reputation. I think there are moments where you kind of like want to slow down, because during this dry bar, that snippet I showed of yours, you were like into it. You had to complete command and attention from the crowd, and you were just kind of swimming around there. I'm just getting back to what you said about you thought it was kind of slow as you were watching it, and it probably felt faster, but
and I will say this, that when you're doing an hour-long show, you can't go, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to hit them all it's going to be 60 minutes of just straight bam, 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 because the crowd will tire and they'll go, we're starting to fade. So you have to have some slower bits and you have to have some slower tempo, and then you can build it back up again for the closer, right? And that's the thing that a guy doing 7 minutes and is just perfecting that 7 minutes and working in a club. I'm in clubs every night. I'm doing this 7 minutes. Yeah, but you don't understand how to do an hour. Because it's a different pacing. It's a different way of doing things. You have to learn to build up again and things like that. It's storytelling. You know what I mean? It's a feature film beginning and an end. You can't just have the rapid fire. Bop, 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 bop.
No, you can't. And that's the art of comedy, is learning how to read crowds and go with the ebbs and flows of it, make the right adjustments and so forth and so on. I did a show with a comic named Brad Stein.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've ever met Brad or not.
Yep.
But Brad and I did a show, this is probably, I don't know, maybe 12 years ago. And I invited him, and, he didn't know that I was a black guy, because we were talking on the phone. So when I picked him up at the airport, he went, "My God, you're black." I said, "Well, Brad, I've been black for some time." But here's the deal. We got to the show, him thinking I'm a white guy. The entire show, the entire audience, everybody's black. So he had prepared a different set.
Oh, okay.
And dude,
Okay.
he started out bombing, and then he did a pivot, Leland. About 3 minutes in, he did a pivot, and he destroyed the room. I mean, Brad just killed. And I said, "Dude, how did you do that? I'm glad you didn't bomb, but how did you do that?" He said, "Well, I've been doing this for 17 years. I've seen it all." So just being able to make adjustments on the fly, adjust to the room, the demographic, what you name it, you learn so many things up there as a stand-up comic. But as I talk about that, Leland, we're moving into a different era, I think, particularly after COVID-19, of stand-up comedy, where it's very easy to offend. And, I think as clean comics, we might have a bigger hill to climb than comics that are profane. I don't know. But our common comedy friend, Donnie the Entertainer Stopa, did a documentary called Comedy versus Cancel Culture. And I want to play the trailer, and then we'll come back and talk about it.
Cancel culture. Cool. We're talking about censorship in comedy. Do you think that cancel culture exists in comedy?
Basically, in a nutshell.
Definitely feel like, as bizarre as it sounds, like there's a war on jokes right now.
Cancel culture, it's such a misdirected umbrella term. You can't police what is subjective.
Oh, wow! Like, you kind of have to live your life bulletproof now. You just have to.
Greatest night in the history of television.
You can't say an inappropriate joke that doesn't have the right context.
There's always going to be some sliver of cancel culture, of woke, of political correctness.
You're not funny, and this is how you have to do the joke, because I know how funny jokes work. That's not the joke.
I don't believe people get canceled. I believe that they have a shift in their audience.
Put your hands together for Mr. Joe Rogan!
When people say somebody is canceled, I think it just means, oh, we found they did or said something that most people don't like.
I date a lot of bimbos. That's the problem.
So what?
So let's think about that joke in today's culture.
Well, let's think about that joke in today's culture, as they say, Leland. Donnie Stopa is going to have that documentary released hopefully before the end of this year. I cannot wait to see it. He mentioned Joe Rogan during that trailer. I'm in Austin, Texas right now. Joe Rogan is all the rave in Austin right now. He just opened up a club here about 3-4 months ago. But there was a moment there where Chris Rock was slapped by Will Smith, right? We've all seen it and ad infinitum. But the thing about it is, Chris Rock made a statement. He said the greatest night in the history of television. Well, I don't know if it was a great night, but it's a moment I don't think anyone is ever going to forget, Leland.
Yeah. I can't believe people were taking Will Smith's side on that. But anyway, don't get me started.
Yeah.
Do you think it's okay to get up and assault somebody because they made a joke about your wife? Come on.
I had no idea there were people out there taking Will's side. I didn't know.
Yeah, on social media, I started to see that the next day, and I'm like, what? Wait a minute, what? But anytime there's a freedom of speech thing, I'm always on the side of freedom of speech. But that's, and I live in Canada where there's hate speech laws, and where you can't say certain things about certain people or whatever. And I don't agree with most of the stuff they're trying to protect. I would agree with them on that stuff that people are saying is hateful and horrible and awful. I still think they should be able to say it. I disagree that we shouldn't, because where do you stop? And if the government's in control, that means eventually they're going to come for me and what I believe. But anyway, that's another story.
That's true. That's very true.
So here's what I'll say about comedy. Here's what you don't know about me. Maybe I have a degree in anthropology, so I studied cultural anthropology, and nothing of that would specifically for any of the times we're talking about or anything like that. But it does, comedy's cultural. People talk about, laughter is universal. It's like, yes, laughter is. Comedy, though, is cultural.
It is.
Certain things will work better in certain culture because there's a culture around it. So because of where our culture is moving in certain circles, that stuff is being filtered out and like, no, that's not funny anymore.
Yeah.
That's just what was always going to happen. It just happened to go this way. I don't know. As a cultural anthropologist, I look at it from those lens and I say, yeah, comedy's cultural. So the other thing I will say is when I started doing comedy 28 years ago, everyone was like, hey man, you gotta have your TV clean. And I was always clean anyway, so it didn't matter to me. But there's comics that were like, yeah, I got my bar set here, but then I have to have it clean because you have to be universally appealing. If you're not universally appealing, you can't be successful because you can't get on television so you got to be universally appealing. Nowadays, that's not the case. There's niches for everybody. There's goat herders in New Zealand people can do jokes specifically for that group. And you can find an audience and they'll come find you.
Yes. Well, I think I like what you said about cultural, because my wife is Brazilian and she was sharing the incident that we were discussing with Will Smith and Chris Rock with some Brazilian friends. And getting back to the point you made about there's some people out there taking Will Smith's side. Well, they took Will Smith's side because from a cultural standpoint, they thought that was offensive what Chris Rock did. But I think, understanding American culture and even Canadian culture for sure, because we're so similar in a lot of ways, it's like, no, that was just a silly, soft
Hey.
lighthearted joke.
Hey, if Will Smith says he was offended by that, yeah, absolutely, you can be offended by that. You can't go hit somebody though, just because you're offended. That's where I was like, nah.
No, well, you can't do that. Again, it was a soft punch. It wasn't vicious on any level. Now we come to find out that his wife had alopecia, which Chris Rock was not aware of, and so it just goes into so many other levels. Bill Burr did a tour all over Europe, and he got to Eastern Europe, and he said that the people in the audience, rather than laugh, started trying to suggest answers to his problem. So I mean, just getting back to what you said about cultural comedy is not as simple necessarily as we might think. However, I look at a guy like yourself who's very physical. I think that would be funny in any environment, because now we're not talking about words. We're not talking about what people believe or used to believe. It's just flat out on the spot funny.
Yeah, well, I mean, and there are cultures that like seeing slapstick type of stuff more than others.
Yeah,
that's so. Again, it still has the same cultural rules. Is this funny in this culture? But yeah, it is easier when you're avoiding some of those word kind of things. But yeah, it still has the same rules apply.
So let me ask you this: in 2023. After COVID-19, I guess more specifically, how do you think stand-up comedy is viewed today?
How do I think stand-up comedy is viewed? Like as an art form? How do people...
As an art form, how is it perceived? There's been many different eras of comedy where, there was a big boom and then it kind of fell off. Like back in the early 80s, it was really kind of drab. And it started to pick up, down. But after COVID, and then you're looking at the cancel culture and all this stuff. And, our comedians looked upon as, bullies. How do people feel about stand-up in general? Just your.
Yeah. I mean, I think like right now, more than ever, you can go online and on YouTube or whatever and find all kinds of independent guys putting out all kinds of stuff. And you look at the success of Dry Bar itself. I don't know how many comics they've pushed through there. All I know is my residual check it got a lot smaller.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more comics out there, but no, man, I really think, I think here's how I think comedy changed a little bit during COVID. There was this perception that we'll be just, you can shift because now you can't go out and do it live, so we'll find other ways to do it, and I think maybe people realize that the genre of stand-up comedy just does not translate that way.
Okay.
Like you can't do Zoom shows and say, it's just like stand-up comedy. No, maybe it's comedy. This isn't stand-up comedy. It's different. It's a different thing. But I do think other forms, I just met a guy, Christian McCartney. Have you heard of that name?
Yes. Christian McCarthy.
I mean, he's got a really big following. He's found a niche in what he's doing, and he's also actually doing stand up and saying, no, I want to build stand up too. But he didn't even have to build stand up because he already had a massive audience doing some of these other things. And it's this quick stuff. It's my kids watch. It's funny because I was talking to Christian and I was like, yeah, you're the same age as my son. And he's like, what? Because I met him at the GCA.
Yeah.
But I think, my kids, they were just showing me some stuff that just yesterday, we had Canadian Thanksgiving here yesterday. And so they were showing me some clips of some stuff that they thought was funny. And, it comes packaged a little differently. And I think coming out of COVID, I think that's kind of exploded even more in that there's so many different types and art. There's artists out there and they're expressing themselves differently than just regular stand-up. But nothing replaces live stand-up comedy. That's kind of what I'll come back to. Nothing is, you watch a video clip of me on a Dry Bar and just, it's great, but nothing will compare to come and seeing me live because something's going to happen that night that's never going to happen again. And we're going to enjoy something as a group collectively at a live show that you can't repeat that. You can't,
Out of all the art forms, there's nothing like stand-up comedy.
Right.
because it's you versus the entire room. And you have to make friends with a bunch of people. I mean, a whole lot of people, more than half of which you wouldn't have a conversation with in front of a Walmart if you could help it.
Right.
But now,
I mean, that's pretty accurate.
Leland, you got to be my best friend. Well, I'm going to make you my bestest buddy for the next 60 minutes or however long
Right.
you're going to be up there. And that's quite a feat, quite frankly and honestly. And I think, it scares people to death to think about taking on such a thing. And we kind of have like an evil Knievel attitude about that as comics. It's like, yeah, let me at him. Let's go see what happens.
Right.
But I think when you're doing comedy, I like what you said about the unexpected. Can happen at any time in a comedy show when you're up there live, like getting heckled.
Yeah.
And I think we represent Christ. It's like we have to respond. I think in a certain way. I mean, some clean comedians are like, yeah, maybe for you. Anyway, how do you Leland, how do you respond in a situation like that? Somebody's just going to interrupt your show. How do you handle that?
Well, you know what? I've always kind of handled it the same, even when I was doing a bunch of stuff in bars and clubs and stuff.
Yeah.
Usually a person just, they want a little attention. So I give them a little bit of that attention and then I move on. Now, sometimes they don't understand, so they continue.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of like, no, you got some attention now. Let's move on. Here's the thing. I usually turn it, I'm self-deprecating the whole time. I'll talk to them and then I'll flip it back, tease myself a little bit. At the same time, I'll tease them a little bit to show like we're giving and taking, but what's moving on. If they don't understand that after I do a few of those, then I'll shut them down. Still nicely, but I'll make it. I'll be a little more. I'm still in control.
You're still in control.
At the end of the day, I'm still the one in control when I'm on stage.
Yes.
So, there's no way I can lose, because if I'm doing a show at a club or something and somebody starts to win, which isn't going to happen, but you say it does, then I just boot them.
Exactly. Well,
I said that to people before when they were really drunk and they weren't understanding. I'm like, look at, here's how it works. At any time I want, I can just get you thrown out. So I don't understand why you think what this is doing. First of all, I'm better at this than you, and I got a microphone, so I'm amplified. And even if those two things can't pull out a win for me, then I just boot you. So you're not going to win regardless.
No, you're not going to win. And I like what you said too. I think most of the time they think they're helping. They don't mean.
Well, that's what they'll say too. Like, I was just trying to help the show. Well, that's the worst thing you can do to help the show.
It doesn't. But if you kind of like give them their 15 seconds of fame, I've noticed anyway, when I do that, they go away.
Usually, yeah. Yeah, usually, they say a little something, and if they do it like a second or third time, and then you're just kind of like, you can kind of point out that you didn't get enough attention last time. Like, you can kind of tease them back a little bit, like, then, oh, okay. They start to realize, oh, maybe I should stop. Yeah. Well, and then they're still my friend. But here's the key: what I found and what I learned early on was the whole audience has to be with you. If you are gonna go after them, go after them. Yes. So they have to disrupt the show enough that everyone's like, yeah, no, this person needs to be dealt with. And then you can say whatever you want, and they're all on your side now. But of course, I don't. Again, I'm not rough on people. I'm trying. It's a service industry, so I'm trying to serve people.
I did a show once, Leland, where there was a vicious female heckler in the crowd, and there's like 8 of us performing that night. And I just said, oh my gosh, this girl was, she was just wicked. And I just said, man, I don't know how I'm going to deal with this. And because she messed she managed to disrupt. No one managed to throw her out. And here I go. I'm starting in, and she gets up and walks to the front in front of me. And I go, oh my gosh, here it comes. And Leland, this woman did not interrupt me, and she liked the set. I got a nice response from the crowd afterwards. She said, because I was the only clean comedian that night as well. Afterwards, she said, because I was just talking about my family, much like you do with your family, just making jokes about. She said, I wish I had a family like that. I'm being abused by my husband.
Oh.
And it made me realize I've made some pretty poor choices in my life. Now, Leland, that just blew me away. because you're not even thinking you should be. I think as clean comics that represent Christ, we probably, and there's no probably about it, we should be thinking about that more. How can I make a difference in someone's life?
We're serving people when we do comedy. That's what we're supposed to be doing.
That's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
And so that heckling came from a serious place of hurt.
Yeah.
And just the fact that you were decent, you were respectful of what you were discussing,
it
made someone who was hurting stop spewing venom and listen. And then thank you for that's the greatest experience I've ever had.
Yeah, that's good.
But that goes back to what we do, and the Comedy in the Kingdom tour is meant to heal. And you, along with all the other comedians that are involved, some of which you met at LOLGCA, are hilarious, good, clean, Christian comedians. And I mean, they're hilarious. That's the thing about clean comedy. Most people aren't willing to really would you just give it a chance? Okay? Just give them a shot. Just listen for a little bit. And I think invariably they'll come away fans, and that's the intention that I have for this tour. I want to ask you this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio. This is the Comedy in the Kingdom Tour edition with comedian Leland Klassen. Leland, I want to ask you this. When you're a comic, you cannot avoid bombing. It's part of the territory. I would love for you to tell us how you deal with that when it has happened to you. Are you one of those guys that can just like flick it off, or it just takes you a few days to kind of manufacture through the experience and then get back at it?
Well, no, I mean, that stuff will sit with you for a while, but you have so many shows that the next day you're already filling up your mind with something next show, right? So
Sure.
But no, I've had lots of tough. I started doing comedy in Saskatchewan, small town bars in Saskatchewan. It doesn't get any harder than that in the comedy industry. I'm convinced of that.
Okay.
But I got some stories. I got people ask me what's your worst bombing experience, and I'm always like, man, I got a lot to choose from. I don't even know which is the worst.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff. I had a bar. It was just all we were told was this town. There's only one bar in the town. Just go do the show there. So we drive out to this town, and we get there, and there was a couple bars. There was 2 bars, and I went into the first one. Didn't see any posters. Must be the next one. Go to the next one. No. Is there a lounge in town? Okay, go to that one. Check it out. Couldn't find this. Like, there's nothing about this show. I'm like, this is the right town, isn't it? So we go back to the first one, and I go into the bar, ask the bartender, have you heard of anything about a comedy show in town? And he was like, yeah, it's here.
Yeah.
It's here. It's right in this. Okay, because I didn't see any advertising for it, so I don't know how people would know that. And he's like, yeah, no, it's here.
Yeah.
So then he goes to get me a room. Me and the other comic. He's like, okay, I'll get you guys your hotel rooms. Now in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, in order to have a liquor license for these bars, you gotta keep a certain number of hotel rooms open. So these are old towns hotel bars, and these rooms are not made for. They're not. You still can't. You shouldn't be staying in them. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
But they keep them open so they can keep their liquor license.
Sure.
And he sent this lady off to go. Let's get this. Hotel room cleaned. She comes back down and is whispering in his ear, and he's just like, so she leaves again. And he's like, yeah, I'll just be a few more minutes. Okay, cool. Yeah, we're waiting in the lobby there. She comes down again, and he's just like, all right. She said she couldn't get the room clean enough.
Oh,
what does that mean?
That's never good, Leland.
Can't get the room clean enough? Does blood not come off? What are we talking about here? So he says, okay, go to the hotel room, hotel across in the other side of town, and I'll reimburse you. And I was like, nope, you're going to pay for it. I don't trust you at all. Sorry. Yeah. But anyway, so we finally got that figured out. We got checked in, came back for the show, and I brought in some sound equipment. There was VLTs, video lottery terminals. So it's kind of like a mini casino in each bar. This is something that happens in small town prairies in Canada.
Yeah.
Well, they didn't want to shut them off, because they lose revenue then. So let's let those things keep going. But there was music playing, and there was 2 couples, I think it was 2, maybe 3 couples that were dancing.
Okay.
That was all that was in the bar. A couple guys at the VLTs, and 2 or 3 couples. I can't remember.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Then they just shut off the music. They don't say anything, and they're like, "Okay, here's comedy."
Oh,
and
boy.
I told the guy who was with me, who was opening for me, I took him on the road with me. He was doing 20 minutes, and I was doing like an hour and 10, cover the hour and a half.
Okay.
He did. I told him, I said, "Listen, if it gets rough, just bring me up. I got this. Don't worry about it. Just if it gets rough, you know." I don't even think he finished one joke. I was like, "Oh, come on, you got to do better than that." I mean, you don't have to do the full 20. That doesn't mean a minute and a half in. Okay, it's headliner time. I was like, "Oh, thanks a lot, you jerk."
It doesn't mean just go out there and bail.
Yeah, he bailed so fast. But anyways, then I started, and there was a woman on there, and she was just really drunk, like just so drunk that you get to a certain point. Like people always say, "Oh, they get drinks and there's comedy, huh? They're ready to go," and it's like, well, it's like a bell curve. Sure, it gets better and better and better, but then it starts going downhill. Okay, yeah. She was way down. She was near the bottom already, and she's just yelling, "Get off the stage! We want to dance! Get off the stage!"
Oh my gosh, dude.
So I'm fighting through this, trying to do some jokes. I finally say to her, "Ma'am, let me just explain something to you. I don't want to be up here. You guys don't want me to be up here. The owners realize this is not what he wanted either.
That's what he realized.
All of us realized this was a bad idea.
That's right.
Well, but I'm doing something right now called contractual obligation.
That's right. That's right.
I have to be on stage for a certain amount of time to fulfill my contract.
Yeah.
So I tell you what, why don't you just listen for the rest of it, and you may probably go faster, and you may even like some of it, and then we'll turn the music back on. We'll all dance. It's going to be a great time. What do you say to that?"
Ah, yes.
Get off of the stage! All right, so she's too drunk to even. I thought if I laid it out clearly for her, yeah, that was at one point in time. This guy starts walking up from the back. This is really huge. He's like 6'8", 6'9", like 350 pounds, and he just starts lumbering up towards the stage. I hear somebody yelling from the back, "Don't do it, Archie! Archie, don't do it!"
Uh-oh.
I looked to the opener who was with me, and I was like, "You got my back? Like, if we have to fight our way out of here, I need to make sure you're with me." I said this on stage. It's on stage. He's like, "Yeah, I'm here." So anyway, we got through. They had a guard that helped us carry our stuff out so we wouldn't get jumped, and that was.
Oh man,
I bombed pretty hard that night. Actually, I had a discussion with him because I had told him that before that all the time. Stage time is the most important thing. If you're a young comic, stage time. All stage time, doesn't matter how all stage time is good. You learn something.
Yes.
At the end of that night, I remember him asking me, "So did you learn something from tonight's stage time?" I was like, no, I didn't. Not all stage time. I'm changing that rule.
Okay. I love the story, and I also agree with the fact that you do learn something every time, whether it's a good or bad experience. You learn something to put in your toolbox, and you just got better. You better realize that you actually got better because you went through this experience, and you did something that 3/4 of the population wouldn't do if you paid them. But great story, Leland. Great story. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to comedian Leland Klassen on the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio. Now, Leland, before we get out of here, but real quick, I want to ask you, what advice do you have for young comics out there, particularly those that are committed to doing it clean?
What advice? Keep doing it. If this is what God's called you to do, then those obstacles are part of the journey, and enjoy the whole journey, and have patience. Maybe that's the thing I'll add to it. Have some patience.
Yeah.
Because it takes a while. Everybody wants to be. Give me that. I want to have that show. I want my own TV show in 3 years. Well, it's not going to happen. You might have 10 minutes in 3 years of good stand-up material.
Yeah, well, that's a great point, because a lot of us go into that with the idea, I'm gonna kill. I'm gonna have my own TV show. I'm gonna be in a movie. I'm gonna be this, that, and the other, and it's a very slow process. one that can take years. Chris
Mm.
Rock, actually, we were talking about Chris Rock earlier. He started out, he killed his first 10 or 15 times on stage. He did amazingly well. And then all of a sudden, when he thought, he said, I got this, he just started to bomb continuously, time and time again, because comedy's not that simple.
Yeah.
And it can take years, and before you really start to turn a corner. How many years did it take you, Leland, before you actually felt like, I think, and I do say, I think I'm a pretty decent comic?
Yeah, I mean, I had some early success with some contests that I won locally, so I was feeling pretty good about myself with some of those. But I tell you this, there's a number that dances around in my head a little bit, and it was a comic, and we discussed this weekend as well. But that it takes about 7 years to find your own voice.
Wow. Yes.
Like when you start doing stand up, to get your own unique voice. Because sometimes you're influenced by other comics and you start to sound like another comic and you're this and that. It takes about 7 years, and I would agree with that. So I was doing well and it was a good comic a couple years in, I feel like. But another milestone was that 7-year mark where I started to really feel like, yeah, no, this is me. This is what I sound like. I mean, there's a show out there now. We've got on, I think it's on Crown TV or Crown Video on YouTube. A show I used to host called Comedy Street. And wow, did I ever sound different. I was hosting it, and I was like, oh, hey, how you doing over there? Hey, like I had this, I was like, what was I doing? But that was, I still hadn't found my voice, I don't think.
Yeah.
And that would have been 4 or 5 years in, got a TV show. I was hosting a TV show. Thought I was set, but stand-up wise, I still didn't get the place I needed to be,
And I think when you've kind of settled into whoever you are or whatever your voice is. You're talking about one thing I have noticed, and we're definitely going to get out of here on this. One thing I did notice right after COVID, if I would go out to a mic and work on some new stuff, when it used to be 12 to 15 comics, it turned into 50. Like, where did these? I don't know if it's like that in Canada. Where did all these comedians come? Everybody's a comedian now. Anyway, right. and it's all bad. I mean, there's a lot of young comics using a lot of profanity, being big time inappropriate, and they were speaking what they thought everyone wanted to hear. They weren't speaking their truth. They were trying to be someone else's truth. And you kind of go, man, so that's kind of, whether you're clean or not, that's kind of what it looked like when you started. You're trying to figure this whole thing out, and you go 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and you still are not there, but it's working now. It's like working, but it's still not you. And then you go a little bit farther down the road, and then you start to get your perch, and you find your quote unquote soapbox, if you will, and you're just able to expound from there. But it just takes. It just takes a while before you get there. Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking to comedian Leland Klassen on the Maurice Brown Comedy Show on Bog Radio in association with 24 Flicks, courtesy of KCHF TV in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And you can also hear this show where all major podcasts are heard: Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, you name it, we're there. Leland, thank you so much for being on the show. And as we step out, how can fans follow you on social media or by website?
If you go to lelandklassen.com, and that's Leland with 1 E, don't add 2 E's. Don't you dare. Lelandklassen.com. You can find, I have links to all my social medias there on Instagram. Yeah, Leland.Klassen and on Facebook and all that. So go there, you'll find me there.
Okay, Leland Klassen on the Maurice Brown Comedy Show. Leland, and also a member of the Comedy in the Kingdom Tour coming summer 2024. Leland, thank you once again, and may the peace of Jesus Christ be with you and your family, sir. God bless you.
Thanks, man. Back at you.